I recognize the member for Regina Walsh Acres.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to join in this debate today. And I guess I feel a little sorry for myself right now because I had a great speech written out planning on how to talk about ISC, and it was a great Crown Corporation. But right now, I really got to counteract some of the history that the member from Athabasca spoke about a couple speakers ago. And I'd like to set the record straight, and he seemed to open up the debate a little bit and talk about some things that were, in his mind, factually correct, which may not be to the rest of Saskatchewan. And one of the things is that the government of the day, when the previous administration, they always had to clean up everyone else's mess. And then they said, we're going to get to it, we're going to get to it, we're going to get to it. Well, the member from Athabasca calls himself a hockey player, just dabbling in politics. And I think one of the reasons he never made it to the big time was that he actually never got his skates sharpened because he was going to get to it, and he could only turn left. But Mr. Speaker, it's interesting that the member talked about some investment into North Battleford, and he said that the member from North Battleford would like me to correct the statement and say that Northland is actually ahead of schedule, and they are under budget. Wow. So now that we're going to get to our ISC and the motion at hand, Mr. Speaker, and first and foremost, we want to make sure that we put our statement on the table that we support our Crown Protection Act, Mr. Speaker. That was in our campaign platform, and we do support that. And this debate could have been a lot shorter. All the member from Newtown had to do was call her predecessor and talk about why they left ISC out of the Crown Corporation Protection Act back when they were in Cabinet, Mr. Speaker. I also think the member from Athabasca was at the Cabinet table at that time too, so they could really get their nine members together and figure this out pretty quick.
Very briefly, he was there.
Mr. Speaker, I do want to talk about that the NDP, I think, did have designs on selling ISC before that's why they left it out of the Crown Corporation Act. Mr. Speaker, that's not only, the NDP did sell off interest in the upgraders for fertilizer plants, and some of which did provide funding for the Children's Hospital that we've committed to building. Mr. Speaker, so I will correct some of the history that has gone by and straighten the record out here. In 2003, the NDP dramatically raised rates at ISC. On a $100,000 house transaction, the pre-increase was $280, and the post-increase was $450, Mr. Speaker. That's an average increase to the average homeowner of 61% under their administration. Mr. Speaker, a $300,000 house transaction, the pre-increase was $280, and the post-increase was $1,050, Mr. Speaker. That's a 275% increase on the cost to the average Saskatchewan homeowner under their administration. And they want to talk to us about not respecting Crown corporations. Mr. Speaker, that should be taken with a little bit of grain of salt. Mr. Speaker, the NDP claims that our government does not respect and like our Crown corporations, Mr. Speaker, but this government continues to invest billions of dollars in Crown infrastructure that the opposition neglects when they're in power. And I know they are going to get to it, they are going to get to it, they are going to get to it, but they just never got it done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the NDP put in a lot of money in failed investments, which costed this province millions of dollars. And Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to read in the record from Hansard in November 2004, the then member from Meadow Lake said, "It is believed these investments will achieve great things." You know what followed that statement? Was that Navigata ended up losing $90 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's another interesting statement that we'd like to remind them. As I said, from the yellow sheet, that does set the history straight a little bit from what was spoken from the other side. And it's the NDP planned to lose money. They planned to lose money. And in 2001, the Crown Investment Minister, Maynard Sontag, said, "I bet, and I will put my job on the line, that we will lose money in the future." Mr. Speaker, does that really make sense? And as one of my colleagues said, he actually did put his job on the line and he ended up losing it, Mr. Speaker. Can you believe someone whose job it is to protect the provincial purse, the taxpayers' money, not an NDP government's money, but taxpayers' money. Can you believe that someone would say, I will bet that the money we invest right now will lose money? Could you imagine a CEO saying that to his shareholders? Can you imagine anyone going into a board meeting and saying, you know what, we're going to throw some money into this, but it's probably not going to work? They should have put it on roulette, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the NDP did have designs to sell ISC, and I believe that that's something that we cannot state enough. And I'd like to just, for the record, read some of our investments that we put into the Crown corporations, which we committed in our election platform that we support the Crown Protection Act, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, in our first term, the Saskatchewan Party government has increased capital spending on Sask Power, SaskTel, and Sask Energy by 39%, which is more than double the 18% increase in spending in the last term of the NDP. More than 18%, Mr. Speaker. And I find it interesting that they run around Saskatchewan, well, most of Saskatchewan, and say, we believe in our crowns, we believe in our crowns, we're going to do this, and you guys are letting them fall to the wayside. Well, Mr. Speaker, that's just not true. It's simply not true. We're investing money so that our Crown corporations can deliver the services to the people of Saskatchewan in a timely manner for one of the best prices in the country, Mr. Speaker. And it is time to set the record straight on a lot of the myths that are being portrayed, like the myth of our booming economy, as their leader would say from his seat. Mr. Speaker, the government has increased investments at Sask Power by 45%, which is a substantial increase from, well, you can guess it, from the previous administration. The 3.3% Sask Power saw in the last term of the NDP government. 3.3%. But, which is a little confusing because as the member from Athabasca said, well, the boom began in 1998. Well, if the economy was booming in 1998, how do you invest 3.3% into Sask Power? You just kept on stripping dividends from the Crown, taking monies from the Crown so you could factually balance your budget, but you didn't invest any money into the Crown, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in our first term, Mr. Speaker, the book value of utility crowns, Sask Power, Sask Energy, and SaskTel, SGI, increased by 45%. The book value of our crowns increased 45%, but we don't respect our crowns. That's a statement that pales in comparison to what? In the first term, this government spent $3.8 billion on SaskTel, Sask Power, and Sask Energy. Mr. Speaker, one might say, and I may take a statement from our illustrious member from Athabasca, we're just cleaning up your mess. We're cleaning up your guys' mess, Mr. Speaker. That's what he likes to say that they were doing for 16 years and cleaning up the mess. And I just want to say, Mr. Speaker, that we appreciate the mess you guys left behind because people are seeing more and more investments in the Crown corporations, are seeing better service, are seeing more timely service. Like the member from Arm River Water said, our Sask Power people did an amazing job this summer in fixing down power lines in Prince Albert, North Battleford. These are hard-working men and women that appreciate a government that's putting money back into their companies, and they're working hard, and they did a fantastic job, and I just want to say thank you very much for the job you guys did during our summer storms.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about what we've done and now what we're going to do, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government is projecting capital spending of $8.1 billion over the next 4 years, with $7.5 billion projected to be spent on utility crowns, Mr. Speaker. $7.5 billion will be spent on our Crown corporations, Mr. Speaker, and that's not because we don't respect the Crowns, which comes from the other side, Mr. Speaker. I would say not respecting the Crowns would be putting 3.3% into a Crown over the last term, not 45%, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, in the first term, the government has invested over $1 billion in SaskTel. And I want to talk about SaskTel for a little while because they're doing a great job. They're doing a great job out in rural Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. Yes, and that's someplace where I came from, and I found it that we have great service out there, and the men and women for SaskTel are providing wonderful service out in rural Saskatchewan. I just want to say thank you on behalf of my family who still lives on the farm out in Rush Lake, Mr. Speaker. And as the time is running short, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that when the NDP go out to rural Saskatchewan, they should maybe tell the truth when they go out and talk about Crown Corporation.